Welcome to another installment of Meditation and Mindfulness. We will begin tonight with a meditation as usual. So this time I'm going to experiment. I think I can play music on the Zoom, so you won't have to use your own separate playlist. So I think this should work. I think we got it wired right. Okay. So let's start by finding our seat. Sit up straight and tall. And let's close our eyes and just start to settle into our seat, feeling our connection to the ground, feeling our body, feeling the weight, the bones in our body. Feel your hips connected to your seat. Feel your torso stacked over the hips. Let's roll the shoulders up to the ears and back and down again, keeping them relaxed and loose while we sit. Stack your neck over your shoulders, slightly tuck your chin, reach with the crown of your head up to the sky. So we'll begin this meditation, or throughout this meditation, we'll use a breathing technique. And so we'll inhale to the count of 4, then hold it for 2 counts, and then exhale for the count of 6. So this breathing pattern is a great way to help yourself relax, slow down the mind. Whenever we slow down the breath, it slows down the mind. Because especially when we focus on a long exhale, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system and slows down our thinking, slows down our reactions, just helps us relax and calm down. So let's practice that a couple times before we start the music. So let's inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So just keep up that breathing pattern throughout this next meditation. And so I'm going to, I have to mute this and then I'll hit play and then we'll get, so when you hear the music started, then go ahead and start. Slowly bring awareness back into the body. Gently waking up the body, coming back. So sorry about the music. I think I figured it out eventually what the problem was. Still figuring out all the technology. Okay, great. So how was that breathing technique?
It was really calming.
Yeah, I find that one particularly calming, especially like I said, whenever we force the exhale to slow down, it's automatically linked with the brain, that it slows down the brain, helps us relax. So great.
Yeah, I liked it too because it really gives you something to focus on.
Right.
And so it keeps your mind really pinpointed.
Right. Yeah. Gives them the mind something to focus on, so you can
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
let go fully. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Great.
I also liked how you introduced it with kind of like what the pace was
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
versus just being like, hey, do a 4 second, a 4 count breath. It was nice that you set the pace and then I was able to follow that through.
Great. Cool. Great. All right. So I thought tonight I would talk a little bit about mindful media consumption, because and this is inspired from the principle from Ayurveda that everything we consume, everything we take in, we have to digest, we have to process. And that applies to food, of course, and food and drink and physical things like that. So if we drink or if we eat good, healthy food, it nourishes the body, it makes us feel good. If we eat junk food, it doesn't nourish the body, it makes us feel bad, it causes disease. Well, the same thing applies with non-physical things. So the same thing applies with the emotions we feel and the media we consume. Any kind of anything we're exposed to, we have to process that. And in this day and age, with the political climate of the country and the world, there's a lot of negativity out there in the media, and especially on the news, on the internet, on Facebook. You can be exposed to a lot of negativity. And so it's important to be mindful of what you're exposing yourself to. Now, we can't just stick our heads in the sand and try to ignore the world and hide from all the negativity. We can't just ignore it. We do have to pay attention to the world. We have to be aware of what's happening. We have to keep an eye on the news, but we have to find the right balance of keeping ourselves informed and engaged with the world, but not to the point that we're taking in so much negativity that it causes us pain and causes us disease. And particularly with the news, because the news, the main goal of the news is not to keep you informed of what's going on. The main goal of the news is to keep you watching. And one of the main ways they do that is by playing a lot on fear, because fear is something that is hard for us to ignore, where our brains are programmed to look out for fear and look out for danger. And so whenever the news or any media outlet talks about something we need to be afraid of, we're kind of automatically drawn into it, right? It's hard to resist something that might affect our safety. And so the media is motivated to keep our attention by playing on our fears. And politicians do this too. I think everyone's quite aware of this. So just keep that in mind, that you do have to watch the news and stay aware, but be conscious of how much you're exposing yourself to all that negativity. I stopped watching the news during COVID because I noticed every time I would watch it, I would just get depressed. I got into a habit of watching the PBS NewsHour, because it's really well done, really well informed, but I was still just, every time I watched it, I'd be depressed. And so now I pretty much just get news through reading. So I feel like when you read something, the emotional output of it is reduced compared to video or even audio. So I found I just kind of go and check the headlines, maybe read a few stories if something piques my interest, or if there's something not clear that I feel like I should be more informed on. But if you find yourself getting really upset about how things are going in the world, you might take a look at how much energy you're taking in, how much of that negativity you're taking in from the world. And I mean, it may seem that we have to be upset right now because there's so much craziness going on. There's so much bad stuff going on. It seems like the world's really a mess right now. But there's a great quote from Joseph Campbell who said that the world is a mess. It's always been a mess. It's always going to be a mess. And the only thing that we can control is how we react to the world. And so, it's true, things might be a little bit more of a mess now than they usually are, but there's still good things happening out there. There's still positive news. I just saw a story today so remember how the Trump administration opened up Alaska for oil drilling? Well, they just had recently they had the auction for those lands, and hardly any companies bid on it. So the whole plan, they were all excited they were going to be able to exploit the Alaska for oil drilling, but hardly any oil companies bid on the land and bought the land. So this is really exciting news, I feel like. And part of it is because the oil and gas industry is in decline right now because of the changes brought about by the pandemic. And so this is really heartening news, right? That at least in this one little aspect, things are getting better, that the oil and gas industry is declining. So that's just one example of how, even though it seems like everything is falling apart right now, there's still positive things to be happy about. Great. So any questions on that? Yeah, I guess for this crowd, you guys are probably pretty aware of that already. Yeah, but I was really struck by that idea from Ayurveda that everything you take in, you have to not just food, but everything you expose yourself, and that also accounts for the TV show. If you watch any Netflix or Amazon or anything like that, all the TV shows you watch, the people you spend company with. So all of that, everything we take in, we have to process. So that it really kind of opened my eyes when I heard that, to be aware of what I'm exposing myself to. And you have a question?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the opposite is true when you're in nature and you're surrounding yourself and taking in just, a sunset. I think of you because you've seen so many beautiful sunsets, or, it's amazing the difference how you feel inside when you've had an experience like that versus binge watching the news, and watching violent protests over and over. I mean, they're showing the same stuff over and over, just like at 9/11 or something, where they showed the same thing again and again. And it's just like, you can feel it inside how your body is reacting to it. So it's just something to note, like you can do the opposite and actually feel yourself in a positive way.
Exactly. Yeah. And thanks for bringing that up, because the opposite is true. Also, when we expose ourselves to healthy, nourishing environments, that nourishes us and makes us feel healthy. So yeah, go ahead, Carla.
I just have to say, even just this time feels so nourishing. Like from having been watching news and things like that to actually come into this circle. And like I know you guys, and just the safetyness and the sangha, right? Like the community that we have.
Mm-hmm.
This is so rich and soul food. And so thank you guys. Like thank you for showing up, and it's really filling my soul. So
Yeah, thank you guys for attending. Yeah. But yeah, exactly. So we have a lot more control over how we feel than we think, and depending on what we expose ourselves to. And thanks, Gina, for bringing up nature, because yeah, that's one of my favorite ways to nourish myself, is to get outside, because then you're just soaking in the stillness and the beauty of nature and the harmony of nature, and then your body processes that and digests that and makes it a part of you. So yeah. And I have a movie recommendation if you're interested. It's on Netflix. If you have Netflix, it's called Absolutely Anything, and it stars Simon Pegg, if you know him. Yeah, so it's a comedy. It's a funny movie, and if you look at the premise, it's gonna sound kind of ridiculous. It's like aliens come and give him the power to make to make any wish come true. So that's where the absolutely anything comes from. He can make absolutely anything happen, and it's really funny. But it raises some really interesting points about some kind of ethical and moral questions about, would you really want that? Would you really want that ability to be able to make all of your dreams come true? It kind of relates to what I was talking about last week with the Hindu notion of the world as a drama. And when everything is perfect all the time, then it stops feeling perfect. And so kind of similarly, if you can make everything you want happen, then there's no more surprises, right? You have, and that would make life kind of boring. So there's some really interesting ideas that at least made me think about it a lot. And plus it's really funny and heartwarming. So this is the kind of thing that you can bring into your life to counteract all the negativity that's out there. Great. So any other questions? Let's move on to another meditation then. This time I'm going to try to get the music right from the start. And so for this meditation, let's go back to our old favorite, the heart chakra. So let's, for this one, let's imagine that on the inhales, we're breathing in love to our heart. And then on the exhale, we're projecting that love out into the world. So let's gather up love here and all this love that we're sharing here, and then share it with the world. Slowly coming back to the body. As you feel ready, open the eyes. How's the sound quality on the music? Is it okay? Yeah, it sounds, I'm testing it out here. That's why I'm logged in twice. It sounds a little wonky on my computer, but does it sound okay to you?
Kind of so-so, I would say.
Yeah, kind of cuts in and out.
It's, you know how if you don't, I don't know what you're doing, but you know how if you were just playing music, it's kind of warped a little bit. There's a little sense of that. Not quite as bad as if you weren't playing it through your computer or whatever, but it's not like perfect in my opinion, but I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe this.
We're not striving for perfection though, are we? I don't know.
Well, for me personally, music is important and sound quality is important. So yeah, maybe I'll have to think on this. Okay, yeah, it's a work in progress.
I feel like that's something that Zoom needs to work on, is a way to have music be playing at a high quality while,
Right, yeah.
because there's so many, like I do this other class and there's always music in it and there's just no good way.
Right, doesn't seem like, yeah. Well, how's the system of listening to it on your own Spotify? How does that work?
That's worked for me before.
Yeah.
Nick does that in his classes and
Right, yeah. I mean, but then that just requires that you have to have Spotify Premium in order to
right.
into, so yeah. All right, I'll have to keep working on this.
Carla, what did you think?
I thought that this song was actually better than like the first with what we started. So I actually felt like it was an improvement.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Like the first song cut in a bit out quite a bit more than this one did for me.
Yeah.
So I thought it was like better.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Great. So how was that meditation?
I wondered, was that song meant to be like one of those like 500 hertz types of, I don't know how all of that works, where there's like,
I don't think so. That like supposed to be tuned to a specific frequency that's supposed
yeah.
to, not that I'm aware of. Why?
Oh, I felt like it was very, I don't know. I was feeling inspired by it. So I wondered, I'm like, oh, is this one of those like frequency songs?
Oh, I don't think so. But I do try to find inspiring, uplifting music. So
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a more lively meditation song. And so that kind of worked with that feeling of like heart generating. Like I felt like that was definitely a different tempo than what we started with. And
right.
it did
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I like music, because it can really, if it's used properly, it can really enhance the meditation experience. And so I know it's still considered heretical in some meditation traditions, but I think it's really beneficial. Mhm. Great. So any other questions or comments? Okay. So another thing I wanted to talk about tonight was the importance of breathing and mindful breathing. There was a question last week about what to do, because last week's class was right after the storming of the Capitol. And so there was a question about what do you do when you're just so wrapped up in your emotions that it's driving you crazy, right? If you're so angry or so upset by something, what can you do to get yourself out of that? And so I've been thinking about that since then. And one really useful tool is by focusing on the breath. So like I mentioned before, whenever you find yourself, if you find yourself really caught up in emotion and you're struggling, you're kind of losing it, notice your breath. You'll probably notice that your breath is coming in really rapid, shallow movements. And when that happens, it's hard to properly oxygenate oxygenate the body. And that just, it's like a feedback loop. It just makes your panic or makes your upset state worse and just feeds on itself. And so a great tool when you're feeling out of sorts or feeling really emotional is to just start paying attention to your breath and deepening your breath, deepening both the inhales and especially the exhales. Like I said before, because when we consciously slow down the exhales, it triggers the parasympathetic nervous system that just automatically, it's like a hack that automatically starts calming down the brain, calming down the body. So that's a great way when you're feeling really amped up about something, is start focusing on the breath and taking both deeper inhales and deeper exhales. Because I was reading in a book by Nishala Joy Devi, the woman who wrote that translation of the Yoga Sutras that we talked about in the training. She's got a book called The Healing Path of Yoga. And there's lots of really great stuff in that book also. And so I was reading about breathing in that book. And most of the time, if we're not paying attention to our breath, we'll take a really shallow breath that only brings in about a pint of air. And so that comes down and just fills up the lungs just a little tiny bit with a normal shallow breath. But if we take a deep full breath, it can bring in up to 7 times that amount of air into the lungs. So when you take a shallow breath, it just fills in the mid part of the lungs right here. But the lungs go up and the lungs go down. So when we take a nice deep full breath, we really fill up the lungs, the top of the lungs, and fill up the bottom of the lungs. So breathing with the stomach, the abdomen, paying attention to the abdomen can really help deepen your breaths by making sure you allow the belly to extend fully. In our culture, with all the importance on appearance, we learn to suck our bellies in, right? We're all kind of self-conscious about how our bellies look. So we rarely let our bellies fully expand when we're breathing. And that's really detrimental to our health because it reduces the amount of oxygen that we can bring into our body. And so, yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say about that. Just when you're caught up in the mind, focus on the breath. That's one tool to help regain composure, help regain mindfulness when the emotions are running out of control. So any questions on that? Yeah, I'm sure you guys are no stranger to the importance of breath.
I will make a comment when I am in those states of, extreme agitation or whatever, or the fight or flight is full throttle, is that I will say to myself, I am giving me, 2 minutes to feel this fully. And that way it actually allows all the physical processes of I have all these endorphins and hormones pulsing. So I'll kind of give all right, I'll surrender to it for 2 minutes so that the body actually can process it. And then I'll go into more of the breath work. But I think there's a part of just not trying to shut down that actual reaction that you're having entirely, but just all right, body, you can have 2 minutes, 4 minutes, whatever, and then go into it.
Great. That's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. And I talked about that last week about how it's normal when crazy stuff happens to have a strong emotional response, and that's normal and healthy. So yeah, absolutely, we don't want to try to repress that or ignore it because that just bottles it up and explodes, makes it worse later. So thank you for bringing that up. Yes. So, and I think focusing on the breath while that happens can help us really just settle into the emotion, right? When we're feeling a really strong emotional response, if we can find a minute to just kind of close our eyes and close off from the world a little bit and just feel that emotion fully while we focus on the breath and allow that emotion, like you said, allow it to sink into our body and allow our body to process it fully and just feel the horribleness fully in that moment and then just let it go. But you're absolutely right. We have whatever emotion is coming up, we have to allow ourselves to feel it in order to process it and let go of it. I think a lot of the times when we get caught up in emotions is because we're not allowing ourselves to fully feel it, because it's too much sometimes. Or oftentimes, I think if one emotion is really out of control, it might be because there's another emotion that we're not letting ourselves feel at all. So lots of times when we feel strong anger, it might be because there's actual fear underneath it that we don't want to admit to ourselves. So yeah, whenever we're caught up in a strong emotion, it can really help to sink in, feel that emotion fully, feel it, understand the texture of it, really feel it. And then also try to feel if maybe there's more to it, more layers to that emotion, or maybe another repressed emotion that we don't want to acknowledge that we have, because either we're ashamed that we have this emotion, or we've been raised to believe that we're not allowed to feel that emotion. I think that it happens a lot with fear and sadness, especially in men. Traditionally in our culture, men aren't allowed to feel sadness, and so we're taught to repress it, and then that just boils up as anger later a lot of the time. I think oftentimes when emotions are spinning out of control, it's the mind trying to make us feel emotions to bring up other repressed emotions, right? It's kind of like a self-defense mechanism. Like the subconscious knows that there's these pent-up emotions, so it's trying to make us feel something to try to get those emotions out. But sometimes it's a different emotion, and so it makes it hard to let it out and express it. So great. Thanks, Carla. Yeah. Any other?
You guys, I have to take off. I have a meeting at 6, so I'm gonna sign off, and thank you so much, and see you next week.
All right. Great to see you, Gina.
Okay, you guys. Thanks, Matt.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Well, that's all I wanted to talk about tonight. Do you have any other unrelated questions about anything, about meditating in general? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah. So I think the only thing I would add on to it was it, and I never know how to say his name, Thich Nhat Hanh was the
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it either.
Yeah, you know who I mean. How so when I am in those states with the anger and I let it go, and then I'm reconnecting back into my breath, then I'll do that. I think it was him who has the practice of breathing in, I know I am breathing in, breathing out, I know I am breathing out. And you just like will repeat that over and over, and it almost becomes that mantra to kind of have that soothing effect where I'm not repeating things or reliving the experience, and it actually becomes that focal point where it's just like breathing in, I know I'm breathing in, breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. And then there are times where I'll actually feel the difference of, oh, it's traveling down from the chest to becoming the full belly breath, and then you're just back to like nice and easy, very even. So
Oh, cool. I haven't heard that before.
yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah. So what did he recommend when you're caught
So
up?
it was just, I think it's a way to get out of like the mind and just be like, and so you're saying to yourself, through the tongue of the mind, breathing in, I know I'm breathing in, breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. And it just, as you inhale and then you exhale, and it just, I think it gives the mind something a cue
Right.
versus going into the monkey mind and that whole.
Or just something else to focus on besides whatever it is that's.
And then in my experience of doing that, I would actually feel the difference of like, oh, when I when it's translating or transitioning from the upper chest breathing and coming down into more of a diaphragmatic full belly breath.
Oh, great.
And everything just calms down.
Cool. Yeah.
So that's how I've been managing through some of the craziness.
Yeah, it's been a lot to take in lately.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah, I think, like you said, every time it seems like it can't get worse, it gets worse.
Or you just blindsided from some other facet that you didn't consider or
Right.
whatever. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So I'm really grateful for this time. It's just, it has been very anchoring.
Oh,
So,
and it's been anchoring for me as well. I mean, giving me something to focus on too. So it's been, yeah, I'm as grateful to you as you are to me.
yeah. Good. Well, then we'll just keep doing it.
Great, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have time, so maybe I'll find a nice long song for us to meditate on,
Okay.
since we have plenty of time. Do you have any kind of request for what kind of meditation we'll end on?
Well, I'm so glad we already did some heart work. So that would have been my request.
Mhm.
So, um,
Well, we
so
can
dealer's choice.
we can continue meditating on the heart. It's always nice to meditate on the heart.
Okay.
Um, okay, yeah. For this one, let's just do the same technique because the world needs love right now. So on the inhales, let's breathe love into our hearts, into ourselves, and then the exhale, imagine we're just beaming that love out into the world, spreading love to everyone who needs it because the world needs more love right now. Okay. Bringing our awareness slowly back into the body. That's such a beautiful song, isn't it? All right, well, if there are no other questions, I think we can say goodbye for the night.
That was beautiful. Thank you. I'm in such a great headspace. Thank you.
Great. Glad to hear that. Mhm. Okay, well, have a good night.
You too. Thanks.
Yeah. All right.
Later.
Yep. Bye.
Okay. Bye.